What's up, PlayStation Universe, and welcome back to our E3 coverage. And today, right now, we are going to talk about a pretty important title, I would say, one of the heavy hitters on the show floor, and that is Deus Ex: Mankind Divided, the sequel to the smash hit Human Revolution.
Yeah.
It's funny to talk about Human. It was a smash hit, totally. It's just funny to talk about it as that when it's obviously a follow up to the original games and the original legacy of those. But
I think it lulled a little bit.
Yeah.
it was a hit in its own right, though. I mean, we'll play
Absolutely.
Mankind Divided for a solid 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Not that long.
No?
It would have been, I don't know. Well, half the thing at the end was like a 10-minute video, which was just obnoxiously long.
I did notice
But,
that. 'Cause I was like standing behind you, like waiting for
Yeah, it was supposed to be like super
"What's
dramatic,
going
was like Jensen like talking to you about like all the ways that he's improved or like how the military's modified him to make him more awesome and like secretly implanted these things, but they literally just listed every single feature that he could do like with him narrating it. So it was like every single like new upgrade and they'd show it and it just kept going going and going. It's like, I get it. And it just would not stop. And I was like, is there something important that I need to know? I was like, no, there's just that. But anyway, that took up most of that. Was like half the thing. But I went through it. I noticed I went through it a lot faster than the other people that were around me did, just because I chose stealth. And I just didn't. I screwed up once, and then I understood where I screwed up, and then just went right through it.
So what did the demo section look like? What were you actually playing?
It was like a... Well, it would have been up in a skyscraper somewhere, and it was like looked like a construction area, and there were a bunch of guards in there. You were infiltrating this area after you dropped from a plane. I think you were sent in from there. Adam Jensen now, like the story where he is now, he got brought on as basically a counter unit to augmented. Like other augments.
Like the augmented riots and stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Augmented people rising up because they're being, outcast.
Yeah, or I think they're labeled as augs or something like this. And so he's basically their response to all of that rioting and everything coming back, like the supremacy of the augmented people that are in the world trying to like just take control. So, but now the military is like basically souped him up even more and given him a lot of better things, and he came on to this task force against the will of all of the other members of the task force to fight against them. So he's thrown in on this mission to go in there and stop this helicopter from taking off, and this deal to go through to kind of help support the rioters that are there.
Is it that the task force doesn't trust him because he isn't?
Yeah,
he's a fellow aug.
Yeah,
Like flat out.
right. And there's a scene at the beginning where the guy's just like that. Something about like not trusting him, and that he'll keep his eye on her if he tries anything funny, one of those classic lines, like, and he's just, and then Jensen's just like, if I do anything funny or something, like, you won't see it coming, and the blade just like shoots out of his arm, like right in front of his neck, and then the guys, then like the commander's just like, knock it off, we got something to do, and he's like, whatever, and then he moves on.
So tensions are frayed.
Yeah, basically. So you're going through that, taking out guys or sneaking around or whatever. It's the same thing like in the past game where you pick whether or not you want to do assault or stealth, and you pick if you want to do close or long range. So I did stealth long range, so I had like a sniper rifle that was a tranquilizer gun. That which severely limits your capabilities if you're found, basically.
Okay,
so it's like, and it's really slow firing. But I snuck around. There's different things. There's a cloaking ability, which I can't remember if there was one in the past. There was.
Very limited use. It would only last
there's
for maybe
there's a tiny
3
little
seconds
battery,
at a
and
time.
that's like, this was extremely restricted for the demo purposes. Like, you could see the bar was like, I don't know, it was like a couple inches big on the bottom of the screen, and it was just like marked off for like. It was like a fraction of it that you could use. So you had a vision mode where you could see like where all the enemies were and where all like the points of interest were for you to like interact with keypads and things like that. And then all of it uses the same energy bar, so you can have a stealth thing where you can cloak yourself and run up and get through different areas. Combat mode that worked into itself, where there was some tutorial stuff that was interesting, but it was really clunky just with how they were mapping buttons. But you're supposed to like press L3 to take cover, and then you can hold X to run through. Yeah.
Oh, that's rough, because that was L1 in the original game.
Yeah,
it was pretty smooth.
You press that to take cover, and then you can like aim where you're your camera a certain direction, then you'll see a line where he's going. You hold X to move to that position, or no, you press X to go to that position. If you hold X, then he'll like move around the cover. If you're aiming, so if you're pushing towards like a thing, you're on the edge of a wall or something.
Yeah.
And you see a barrier that you want to go to. You push forward on it, and you are supposed to press X, and then he'll dash to it and take cover. But if you're still learning how to do this or not used to doing it a lot, and a lot of prompts in games want you to hold buttons to have actions nowadays. So I was holding X, and then he was just kind of like awkwardly like getting up and then just like walking around and like taking cover by the wall. I mean, I was like, I'm right in the middle of the side. Like,
it's not exactly a fault of Deus Ex. Obviously, there's issues there, but like the ubiquity of cover systems in so many games that we play at the moment, it is becoming a bit overwhelming. That they're always differently mapped. There's different animations,
but
and
there's also an industry conditioning that goes on that a lot of developers like that they just clearly aren't acknowledging, which is kind of a problem. Same with like if you tap square to reload your gun as you normally would. If you hold square, he'll look at his gun, and then you can select different parts of it to customize in real time on the field.
Yeah.
But square is also used to interact with doors and things in the world. So it's mapped to 3 different things at once, and usually the same type of thing. If you're going to interact, like open a door, most games nowadays you hold square.
Yeah.
So half the time I was trying to get through a door, or trying to interact with something, and like one of the things is a helicopter. You're trying to like sabotage the battery in it so it can't get off. And there's like gun firing happening all around you, and I ran over to it, and I was trying to hold square to interact with it, and then he stops and just looks at his gun for a while, and I'm just like, no, don't do it. Pretty good. And then I went to put it away, and then I tried to tap square, and I held it for just a little bit too long when I was like pressing it down, and he looked at it again, and I was just like, this.
That's pretty perplexing.
Totally
Design philosophy.
And what's odd is that it represents a change from the original game. As far as I remember, X was the way you interacted with environmental objects, and I feel like square was still reload in Human Revolution, and I certainly never remember having a problem with that, and it does sound like they've changed the button configuration.
It was just like that. There was just a lot of that where everything did like 3 things on the same button, and it's just
so.
And like the gun modification thing, I understand like they want you to do it while it's like on the field and all that, but why not have it mapped to like a D-pad or like have it
touchpad?
Be it like touchpad, press options.
It's not used for anything else.
Like press options to bring up a menu, and then like have it be like you select what you want, and then he takes the time to animate and do it on the field.
Yeah, so there's still some risk to it.
Yes, there's still some risk, so you're not just totally like set up. It's like it was just a mess for some of that.
Yeah, so I feel like that's so some of those issues. It's unfortunate to hear, but I feel like that's something where I'll get used to that after unfortunately it doesn't demo well, but after an hour or so I'll adjust to it. What I'm probably most curious about as a fan of Human Revolution is do the environments feel really? I mean, I love Human Revolution's dense, vertical, highly
like what kind of opportunities are present.
And I've played that game all the way through 3 times over the years, and I continue to find new just little things I never found before, like a hacking terminal or a vent on this floor that leads to new places. So did you get some of that feeling?
Well, that was definitely part of the reason why I was able to get through the areas like twice as fast as anybody around me. Was just because they went for assault where they had to work their way through, or they didn't even try to bother looking around. I found a couple of air vents on the outside, like followed the mentality of stealth, where it's like go around the perimeter. Found a couple air vents, went through them, and I cut through like half the map, basically. Or like and same with like learning. The only time I died one time, I was totally fine. I dropped down in an area and I thought I was safe, but somebody saw me, and the meter filled up way faster than I anticipated, so then I got found out. And then the second time I learned, it was like, I have this cloaking ability. I bumped that on quick, dropped down, even though it's really fast, took cover quick, and then I started using dash, climbed up a ladder, and then I was out.
So the other thing is that Deus Ex has a visual style. It's not necessarily aiming for photorealism. And watching over your shoulder as you're playing the demo, I could tell that's still not their aim. Photorealism is not really what they're going for. But did it feel consistent with the Deus Ex universe? Did it look the way you wanted it to, or
it looked the same?
Okay, really, the same as Human Revolution.
Yeah, basically, from what I remember, it had the same impact on me.
I will say that Human Revolution is probably uglier than you remember it being.
It actually is.
But let me finish my point, though. I said it would look the same as to the visual standard that like Human Revolution was to the other games of the time. This is the same as that, where it's like it's just like a step behind.
Yeah, a bit behind the bleeding edge.
So I mean that comparison is about the same.
It's interesting because there was speculation once it got, because we saw it last year and we saw like extended kind of gameplay
And it
behind
looked
closed
kinda
doors
rough.
stuff. It looked a little bit rough, granted, but I don't think any of us expected to get a delay of, what was it, around 6 months originally, and I think the general consensus at the time was it wanted to get out of the way of some heavy hitters. I can't remember what exact games there were at the time, but
Yeah.
can you get a feeling or a sense of why that delay was so like it was a hefty delay? I can't remember exactly how many months. I think it was the original date must have been, I think it could be 4 months or so, or 5 months. Like it was something pretty significant. And like from seeing it, the gameplay looked pretty solid. Like,
the gameplay was fine.
like
The
it
only
ran
issue
okay, you know,
yeah, the only issue with gameplay for feeling was just the button mapping was just something you have to get used to.
yeah, because
So
normally
it's not inherently a problem. It's just like it doesn't demo well if you're conditioned by other games today.
yeah, because I'm just thinking, because obviously you were watching him and you saw it last year. If you have a delay as sizable as that, it can speak to maybe underlying issues or.
Well, I have to imagine that the slice they showed us last year was a particularly polished portion of gameplay.
Yeah, it would have to be.
I think if anything, like it seems like they've had the general story mapped out for Mankind Divided for years now, and even last year they had the lead writer there to answer questions about where it was going. So if anything, the delay, you know, with a game like this that is approaching RPG with the abilities that you collect and the way those interact with people around you, there is some pretty intense balancing discussions that I'm sure Eidos has to have in the process, and maybe not quite extensively as like an MMO would be or a turn-based RPG would be, but they still have to be like, okay, let's say that Jensen's cloak lasts 4.5 seconds. How does that change this level? How does that change this level? And do it through testing there.
I mean, the only other thing I would say would be like the visual stuff, and the animation could have been part of that, because it still was pretty rough. Like the animations were still kind of jerky. It didn't feel as fluid or natural as, well, even still as what was promised in that first announcement trailer for Human Revolution, where he runs towards the wall and punches through it and snaps the guy's neck and just walks away like a badass. Yeah. So it still was pretty choppy in some of that stuff, and especially when you're sneaking up behind somebody doing the melee attacks, and it was just like it was kind of a jarring switch, and then there were a little bit of some hiccups moving through that.
That's surprising to an extent. So I guess that's obviously hindered your opinion of it slightly. So I guess it's not really a huge negative thing, or really doesn't take away from it as much. It's just kind of disappointing to see that it didn't advance itself as much as you would have expected by this point.
It does really seem like Human Revolution 2.0 from what I see standing behind you, less so than a new
there was nothing
astounding Deus Ex.
And the things that like that trail, I think that's a lot of it for the demo. You didn't get to see any of the new features like that Adam Jensen could do, or new abilities or anything like that. That's why that 10-minute video was there that I had to sit through, where he just talks about how cool he is now, basically. And it was like, why didn't you just let me try it?
Then you have to question the setup of a demo that's sensibly there to show you the new features, the new look, the new
why would I could understand it's very specific to the environment that you're in and the enemies that you're encountering, that those specific tactics would be used at certain times, but why not just have it be like simulations? Just like training room simulations. Like he's in a lab, it's like, okay, Jensen, we're going to test out your new augments and
the old VR demos.
And just do that, and
VR missions.
A second disc.
Have
to buy both.
But then they had to throw. Part of it was just, I think they wanted you to get a little bit more of a flavor of the story, which there still really wasn't much, because we know about I can't remember his name, but the big burly guy with the giant augmented arms, and and that one gameplay trailer last year, he shows up again at this one with, there's a bunch of people that infiltrated the deal that was going on and killed all the people that were there, and these were augmented people, and you have to go in there and clean that up and stop the helicopter from taking off. So
there's some interesting parallels between Detroit and the Augs of Deus Ex's world, kind of. I mean, not in the term that they're like androids who are slaves who are rebelling, but it's clearly there's a social divide happening here, and I think in terms of story, that's the biggest contrast between Mankind Divided and Human Revolution. I mean, and I agree with what you're saying. It's always seemed like a direct gameplay sequel, like a game that could have come out 2 years after Human Revolution. It's 5 years after.
It really seems like it should have been out.
But with the story, Human Revolution was very much a global Illuminati conspiracy story when all was said and done. And this, at least so far, that hasn't seemed to be the case with Mankind Divided. It's more seems to be more social commentary and more of a neo-noir thriller look at the near future.
And the one last thing too about that ending, which was somewhat interesting. I don't know if this is present in the other ones, or I didn't actually see it happen to the other people too when they got to the point. But there was a sandstorm that like hit where I was, so that completely obstructed. Well, not completely, but it severely obstructed the visuals of the enemy. So I was able to kind of, I jumped around, snuck around the side, and I was able to flank them all and get through it without any trouble that way. Because he's got the lenses on his eyes that he can see every enemy anyway. Yeah. So basically I would just wait till it was charged up, hold it down quick, and then peek around the corner and get headshots quick. Nice. And I didn't see that happen in the other demos that I was watching, other people playing through, or they're running through it, or maybe it just had already happened when they were out there. But so I don't know if those are scripted instances. I would imagine that they are, but they could be some random situational. There was a comment. There was a comment on it by the general or whoever it was that was in his Adam's earpiece, but there wasn't. Otherwise, it was pretty much more of the same. For better or for worse, however you see it, it's like it played really well. I really liked Human Revolution, so I mean, I have no doubt that this is going to be a great game. Like, it definitely is going to be a great game, but it's not doing anything.
It just doesn't seem like the step up.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like a Deus Ex Evolution.
Doesn't seem like it's coming out on a new generation of consoles.
Yeah.
No, not really.
Too bad.
So.
Okay. Well, thank you both, Will and Kyle, for your thoughts on Deus Ex Mankind Divided, and stay tuned to PSU all throughout the week for all the C3 coverage in the form of videos, articles. You can go on our social media areas: Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, Snapchat, where you can see the show floor and see our big man Ernest over there deliver the real things to you. So either way, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.